Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're plunging headfirst into the fascinating, really ever-evolving world of psychology. We truly live in, well, dynamic times, don't we? Old theories are constantly being put to the test, and surprising new ideas are flourishing, challenging what we thought we knew about the human mind. Our mission today is to give you a true shortcut to being incredibly well informed on some highly relevant psychological concepts. We're drawing from rich source material, specifically excerpts from a recent book called The New Psychology, which, well, it aims to capture the cutting edge of the field.
And this book actually has quite the origin story.
Mm.
The author shared that it was part of a 50 Ideas In series, and the original writer for the psychology volume unexpectedly pulled out. Our author stepped in with two pretty strict conditions. First, all 50 ideas were already chosen for him, and second, he had to write the entire 65,000-word book in just 1 month. And each entry needed to be precisely 1,350 words with a very specific structure.
Wow, a month. That's an astonishing deadline for any book, let alone one trying to distill complex psychological ideas. I mean, I can only imagine the pressure.
Absolutely. He even noted that the hardest entries to write were, paradoxically, the ones he knew too much about. It was incredibly challenging to summarize complicated and, often disputed ideas with contradictory findings and such a limited word count. Especially when you're deeply aware of all the uncertainties and nuances. It really highlights just how difficult it is to condense vast knowledge into digestible insights.
Yeah, that makes sense. What's truly fascinating about this deep dive is how packed it is with counterintuitive insights and quick nuggets of knowledge. We're talking about things like how emotional intelligence can often matter more than, say, raw cognitive intelligence for success.
Right. Or that surprising finding that a significant portion of homicides in North America are linked to infidelity.
Or even something as simple as a pleasant smell in a room can actually make people more generous. These are the kinds of surprising facts and aha moments we'll be exploring with you today. So let's unpack this first point. How much has psychology actually changed? I was looking back at my old undergraduate notes from, gosh, nearly half a century ago, and it's quite astonishing how little of what I was taught back then is now considered relevant or useful or even correct. It really feels like the ground is constantly shifting under our feet.
It's true. The landscape of psychological inquiry has shifted dramatically. Many foundational theories from the past have been tested and, well, ultimately failed, while entirely new ideas have emerged and taken center stage. Concepts that once dominated, like Freudian psychoanalysis, for example, are now often relegated to footnotes in the history of the discipline.
Just footnotes, really?
Pretty much. And critically, entire fields that are prominent today, such as neuroscience or the applications of artificial intelligence, were practically unimaginable even just a few decades ago. It really speaks to psychology's dynamic nature.
It sounds like, just like any academic field, psychology isn't immune to fads and trends. We get excited about the new and shiny, but that doesn't always guarantee enduring truth, does it?
Precisely. And this brings us to a crucial concept the author highlights: the jingle-jangle fallacy. This describes two related errors in thinking. The jingle part is the erroneous assumption that two different concepts are the same simply because they share a name.
Okay.
And the jangle part is the reverse, believing two similar things are different just because they're labeled differently.
Okay. So if something gets repackaged with a new, catchy name, we might think it's groundbreaking, but it could just be the same old idea dressed up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A prime example given is emotional intelligence. The author of our source material used to joke about it, recalling that in university, he knew it as social skills, and his own father just called it charm.
Charm.
It beautifully illustrates how a concept can be rebranded or re-emphasized over time without being fundamentally new. The core insight here is to look beyond the label, understand the underlying idea. Are we truly learning something new, or just seeing old wisdom in new clothes?
That's a great principle to carry forward. Now let's talk about navigating this modern world by understanding ourselves and specifically how our own minds can sometimes trip us up. We all have these universal mental shortcuts, right? Developed through experience, supposed to help us process information faster. But these cognitive biases can lead us into quite a bit of trouble.
They absolutely can, and recognizing them is the first step toward clearer thinking. Take overconfidence, for instance. Your brain is almost hardwired for it, making you consistently overestimate your abilities, your performance, even the accuracy of your own beliefs. It's not just thinking you're better than others, though that's part of it. Overplacement, they call it. It's also overestimation, an inflated view of your own ability, and overprecision, that exaggerated confidence in how accurate your beliefs are. It often leads to poor outcomes.
That feels incredibly pervasive. I can see that. What about the sunk cost bias? I know I've definitely fallen victim to this one more times than I care to admit.
Oh, you're not alone there. The sunk cost bias is that powerful tendency to throw good money after bad, so to speak. You continue investing time or money or effort into a project or decision that's clearly losing, simply to justify what you've already spent.
Right.
Think of it like a gambler who walks into a casino saying, "I've come to get my money back."
Yeah.
The profound insight here is that past costs are unrecoverable. Wise decisions are made based on future potential, not past investments.
That's a perfect analogy. Really hits home. And then there's availability bias. This one makes so much sense when you consider how our minds process the sheer volume of daily information.
It truly does. Availability bias means that if something is easily and quickly recalled from memory, perhaps because it was recent or vivid or frequently reported in the news, we tend to rate it as more important or more likely to occur, even if that's not true in reality. The problem is, the frequency with which particular events come to mind often isn't an accurate reflection of their actual probability.
So it feels common, even if it's not.
Exactly. This can lead to what we call illusory correlations, where we believe events that occur at the same time are causally related simply because they're easily recalled together. The surprising insight. Your brain prioritizes recallability over actual probability, making you vulnerable to misleading narratives.
Wow. Speaking of things that are easily recalled and widely believed, often despite evidence, let's talk about conspiracy theories. Our source material describes them as beliefs in vast, insidious, secret networks designed to manipulate events, often by powerful people trying to conceal their true role.
Yeah, and research provides some interesting insights into who tends to believe these theories. Studies suggest that conspiracy theory believers are often more inclined to lean right on the political spectrum, engage in magical thinking, express distrust towards public officials, and generally reject the established political system. It seems often driven by a need for certainty and control in what feels like an uncertain world.
This raises an important question, though, and the source material touches on a powerful counterargument, which is that real cover-ups do happen. Historians, for example, often document them after a 30 or 50-year rule, when classified documents finally get released.
Right, things like Watergate or the Pentagon Papers.
Exactly. These are, in effect, the exposure of truths often initially dismissed as conspiracy theories. So could it be that sometimes those we label as conspiracy theorists are actually better informed or at least more skeptical than those who just accept the official line?
That's a very valid and critical point. It really highlights the tension between healthy skepticism and, well, uncritical belief. While a conspiratorial mindset often relies on cognitive biases like confirmation bias, seeking out information that confirms what you already believe, the existence of those historical examples shows that distrust of authority isn't always unfounded. The challenge for us as informed citizens is to discern between genuine scrutiny of power and the kind of pattern seeking that can lead to unfounded conclusions. It's about evaluating the evidence, not just the narrative itself.
That's a crucial distinction. Okay, let's shift our focus now to how psychology is adapting to the digital age, a landscape that's rapidly changing everything around us. Generative AI, for example, is already reshaping our world. It truly feels like this generation's internet moment, doesn't it?
It really does. It's a powerful and transformative tool, and understanding its different forms helps us grasp its potential. We generally distinguish between narrow AI or weak AI, which is limited to specific programmed tasks, like a chess-playing computer or a recommendation engine. Then there's artificial general intelligence, or strong AI, which would theoretically function like a human across diverse tasks. We're not there yet.
Right.
And finally, artificial superintelligence, which would go far beyond human cognitive capacity. AI promises to make work easier, faster, maybe more objective, enhancing an organization's ability to find the right talent, predict job performance, even reduce some forms of interviewer bias.
Okay.
It's also being explored for coaching individuals and optimizing team dynamics. Lots of potential.
But what's truly fascinating here, beyond those promises, are the critical considerations surrounding AI. When it's trained on vast amounts of human-generated data, what does that actually mean for fairness and bias?
This is where understanding the psychology of AI becomes vital. The pattern recognition of these generative AI programs is directly based on the human-dependent data they're trained with. This means if the data reflects existing societal biases or inequalities based on race, gender, whatever, the AI can inadvertently propagate those very issues. So if training data is predominantly from certain demographics, AI's outputs might reflect those existing patterns, leading to biased recommendations or decisions in hiring, for instance.
So it learns our biases.
It can,
Yeah.
yes. The profound implication is that AI isn't inherently neutral. It mirrors the biases present in the human data it learns from. So developing AI systems requires a deep psychological understanding of human bias in data collection and algorithmic design. It's a huge ethical consideration.
Absolutely. And beyond AI, big data is also making huge inroads into psychological research. We're seeing how it can create these holistic pictures from diverse sources, like you mentioned, using smartphone step counts to understand a person's behavior patterns.
Absolutely. And with big data comes fascinating insights into human behavior, including impression management online. Research shows people are much more likely to advertise personal accomplishments online than negatives, which has huge implications for recruitment when people screen candidates on social media.
Oh, I bet.
Paradoxically, social media can be even more prone to faking than traditional interviews because people curate their digital selves so carefully. And when it comes to wearables, this data can be used for social network analysis, maybe tracking contacts via badges to understand collaboration patterns,
Interesting.
or correlating physiological data like blinking patterns with personality traits such as agreeableness. It offers an unprecedented window into our behavior.
So what does this all mean for employees being monitored? I imagine there's a good deal of skepticism towards workplace surveillance, whether it's through our devices or other means.
There certainly is, and studies confirm that skepticism. People generally remain wary and suspicious. And the research suggests the more alienated or unhappy employees are, the more negative they tend to be about surveillance. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, totally.
However, transparency is absolutely key. If an organization thoroughly, honestly, and clearly communicates the purpose of the surveillance, for instance, for safety improvements rather than just tracking productivity, it's much better received. The psychological insight here is that trust, even in this digital age, really hinges on perceived fairness and clear communication of intent.
That tracks. Okay, another interesting development, particularly in personnel assessment, is gamification. Using games to evaluate candidates based on speed, accuracy, test score, even style of play, often replacing traditional methods like interviews or questionnaires.
Right. Gamification holds a lot of promise, or at least that's the pitch. It can potentially increase job offer acceptance because it makes the organization seem more tech-focused and forward-thinking. More importantly, proponents claim it can offer improved criterion-related validity, meaning it's harder to fake or cheat compared to, say, a personality questionnaire. For example, games like Taboo might be used to assess verbal reasoning, and word search could measure visual attention and speed.
And you mentioned the balloon analog risk task, or BART. That sounds particularly fascinating for assessing risk-taking.
It is quite clever. The BART is a computer game where you pump up a virtual balloon on screen. Each pump adds a small amount of money to a temporary bank. But there's a break-even point, say, after 64 pumps. In one version, after which additional pumps significantly increase the risk of the balloon exploding. If it explodes, you lose all the money you accrued for that balloon. It's designed to model real-world risk-taking situations where excessive risk leads to diminishing returns or even losses.
So it measures how far people push it.
Exactly. The underlying psychological insight is about how we balance potential gain against increasing risk. It's still being evaluated, however. If gamification truly fulfills its promise of being both engaging and fun and genuinely accurate for serious assessment purposes, the jury's still out on some of that.
Right, the fun versus validity trade-off. Okay, let's shift our attention now to the human element, work, identity, and well-being in this modern context. The concept of authenticity crops up everywhere in business literature, doesn't it? Encouraging us to express our real thoughts and feelings at work. But is it always practical or even desirable?
Okay, yeah, let's unpack this one. Bring your whole self to work. It sounds wonderful on the surface, right? But is it truly practical in all situations? Do we really want waiters, cabin crew, or sales staff to be themselves all the time, especially if they're dealing with difficult customers or just having a bad day?
Probably not ideal for customer satisfaction.
Exactly. Or should you be completely, unfilteredly authentic in a high-stakes job interview? Often what's genuinely required is effective impression management. This is where concepts like self-monitoring become relevant. High self-monitors are sensitive to social cues and adapt their behavior accordingly. They're good at impression management. Low self-monitors are more consistent and, you could say, authentic across situations, regardless of the social cues.
So one isn't necessarily better than the other?
Not necessarily, they're just different styles. The surprising insight is that authenticity, while culturally valued, isn't always the most adaptive or effective strategy in every professional or social context. Sometimes fitting in or managing the impression you make is more crucial.
And when it comes to managing emotions in the workplace, our source draws a distinction between surface acting and deep acting. What's the difference there and why does it matter?
It matters significantly for both employee well-being and customer experience. Surface acting is when employees display the emotions required for a job like a smile without actually changing how they feel internally.
Faking it, essentially.
Pretty much. And it can be emotionally exhausting over time, leading to burnout. Deep acting, on the other hand, is a more effortful process, where workers try to genuinely change their internal feelings to align with organizational expectations. So, trying to actually feel positive or empathetic, this can produce more natural and genuine emotional displays.
That sounds harder.
It can be, initially, but some research suggests it might lead to less emotional dissonance or long-term strain compared to constantly faking it. The objective of both, typically, is to enhance customer satisfaction. The insight is that managing emotions at work isn't just about putting on a mask. It can involve deeper emotional regulation strategies, for better or worse.
Right. Okay, now let's talk about organizational disenchantment. What leads to that feeling of cynicism or distrust towards one's workplace?
Well, our source highlights two main drivers. First, there's perceived organizational lying, or hypocrisy, basically, a gap between what the organization says and what it actually does.
Saying one thing, doing another.
Exactly. And second, perceived inequity, things like favoritism, unfair treatment, or unmet promises and expectations. These experiences can create what the author calls a cascading effect, leading from initial disappointment to suspicion, then growing distrust, and finally, deep-seated skepticism and cynicism.
And what happens when employees reach that point?
Typically, there are three classic responses outlined. Some choose to leave the organization, others stay, but seek revenge maybe through minor acts like stealing office supplies or more serious sabotage.
Ouch.
And a third group might stay but essentially disengage, doing the bare minimum. The source differentiates between the dark disenchanted, those who disengage or seek revenge, and the neurotic disenchanted, who might disengage and eventually leave due to constant rumination and unhappiness.
That paints a pretty bleak picture of the consequences of perceived unfairness.
It really underscores the importance of perceived justice and consistency in the workplace.
Let's pivot to a fundamental human emotion: disgust. Our source notes it's a well-known reaction, but is increasingly under the scientific spotlight. What are we learning about it?
Disgust is fascinating because it seems to have deep evolutionary roots, primarily aimed at protecting us from disease and contamination. Early researchers broke it down into categories like simple distaste for food, core disgust related to bodily products, animal reminder disgust linked to our awareness of mortality, interpersonal contamination from sick people, and socio-moral disgust related to unethical acts like defrauding someone.
So it covers quite a range.
It does. More recent categorizations often simplify this into three main domains: pathogen disgust, avoiding disease; sexual disgust related to things like incest avoidance; and socio-moral disgust, violations of social norms or ethics.
Okay. And the source brings in a psychoanalytic perspective too, linking it to anal personalities.
Yes, it touches on that, linking the Freudian idea of the anal retentive personality, associating the withholding of excrement in childhood with later traits like saving, collecting, orderliness, and the anal explosive linking expulsion with spending, producing messiness.
That's quite a theory.
It is, and like much psychoanalytic theory, it's not easily testable in a rigorous scientific way, but the source includes it, stressing that these are seen as dimensions, behaviors falling on a continuum, not just distinct types. The core idea is linking early experiences with later personality styles, however controversial that link might be.
Got it. Now, shifting gears slightly but still related to well-being, mental health literacy, or MHL, what is that exactly?
MHL is basically the knowledge and beliefs about mental disorders which aid their recognition, management, or prevention. It's about understanding mental health information well enough to promote your own well-being and that of others.
And how literate is the general public?
Unfortunately, research consistently shows rather poor MHL in the general population, and this significantly impedes people seeking help when they need it. Just to give you an idea, one U.S. study found a nearly 50% lifetime likelihood of experiencing a mental illness. Yet in another study, only about 39% of people could correctly identify depression from a vignette, and only 27% could identify schizophrenia.
Wow, those numbers are quite low.
They really are, and certain socio-demographic factors influence MHL. Generally, older age, lower education levels, and higher religiosity are associated with poorer MHL, whereas being female, younger, having higher education, and living in developed countries tend to correlate with higher MHL.
Can you give an example of what an MHL assessment might ask?
Sure. Questions might assess things like, do you know where someone could get professional help for depression? Do you know what conditions make psychotherapy effective? Or what are the risks associated with PTSD? It covers recognition, causes, self-help, professional help, and overcoming stigma.
That makes sense. It's clearly an important public health concern. Let's touch on neurodiversity. It's a term we hear more often now. How does the source define it?
Neurodiversity is presented as an umbrella term for several developmental psychiatric conditions that are understood to be partly genetic and affect brain development. Examples include autism spectrum disorder, ASD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, difficulty with numbers, Tourette syndrome, and dyspraxia, coordination difficulties.
And there's some controversy around the term, isn't there?
Yes, there is. The core debate is whether these conditions should be viewed primarily as disorders that need fixing or as representing extreme differences between strengths and weaknesses, just part of the natural variation in human brains. The source presents a sort of compromise view, acknowledging that these conditions often involve genuinely dysfunctional behaviors that cause difficulty, while also recognizing them as representing extreme differences within a spectrum of natural human variation.
A middle ground, perhaps.
Something like that, yes. Trying to balance acknowledging challenges with respecting differences.
Okay, what about the popular idea of the mad genius? The troubled artist, the anguished scientist. Is there any truth to that narrative?
The mad genius trope.
Yeah.
It's a very popular narrative, isn't it? The brilliant creator who's also anguished, addicted, or perhaps psychotic. Our source material argues pretty strongly that this is largely a myth, perpetuated by cognitive biases and often based on anecdotal evidence or poorly recorded historical data rather than solid scientific findings.
So bad science fuels the myth.
Essentially, yes. Several biases play a role. There's the base rate fallacy. We overestimate the link because we focus on the few famous examples. But most creative people are not mentally ill, and most mentally ill people are not exceptionally creative. The base rates don't support a strong connection.
Okay.
Then there's the availability heuristic, or maybe avoidant heuristic, as the source puts it, possibly a typo for availability. Hollywood portrayals and popular books make the idea easy to recall.
Right, it's memorable.
Exactly. Also, illusory correlation. Seeing co-occurring events like creativity and struggle in one person and assuming they're causally related. And confirmation bias. We tend to remember the facts that support our existing beliefs, like focusing on Van Gogh cutting off his ear and ignoring countless stable, successful artists.
So the conclusion is?
The source concludes pretty bluntly that this myth is largely based on bad science, lazy journalism, and gullible readers. Strong words, but it reflects the lack of robust evidence for a causal link.
Understood. Moving on to an emotion we all experience, and one that our source highlights has more motivational power than just looking back. Nostalgia.
That's right. Nostalgia isn't just about dwelling pleasantly or sometimes melancholically on the past. It's framed as a powerful emotion with real utility for our present and future well-being. Our source outlines 3 key functions it seems to serve. First, it provides a crucial sense of meaning in life. It helps us feel our existence has worth, purpose, and fits into a coherent story. Second, it offers a strong sense of self-continuity. It connects our past self with our present self, clarifying who we are and our path through time.
Bridging the gap.
Exactly. And third, and perhaps most surprisingly, it acts as a powerful buffer, a coping strategy, and a pick-me-up. Studies mentioned suggest loneliness is actually associated with higher levels of nostalgia, and experiencing nostalgia then seems to suppress the negative effects of that loneliness.
So it's protective.
It seems to be. You could almost call it a healthy drug. You can access any time to regulate your mood. The profound insight here is that nostalgia isn't trivial. It's a vital psychological resource, actively helping us navigate challenges and maintain our sense of self.
That's a really positive take on nostalgia. I like that.
It even mentions briefly how environmental features, certain scents, sounds, even temperature can trigger nostalgic moods and influence things like shopping behavior.
Fascinating. Okay, finally, let's tackle a big one. The possibility of personality change. We often hear about it, especially from industries promising self-improvement diets, therapy, coaching, despite, let's be honest, many personal failures to achieve sustained change. What does modern psychology actually say? Can we really change?
It's a really common belief, isn't it? fueled by hope in those industries you mentioned. The scientific findings present a much more nuanced picture than simple popular optimism might suggest. Research now definitively shows that personality traits can and do change throughout life. It's not entirely fixed after a certain age, as was once thought.
Okay, so change is possible.
Yes. These changes can happen gradually over the lifespan, sometimes in response to significant environmental shifts like starting a new career, entering a long-term relationship, or experiencing major life events. And change can also occur through purposeful interventions like certain forms of psychotherapy. This provides a solid scientific foundation for understanding personality development as a lifelong process, not a completely fixed state.
But, and there's usually a but, if change is possible, why does it often feel so hard for so many of us to make lasting changes we want? The when, why, and how of sustained change still seem a bit murky.
Precisely. That's the crux of it. Those are the ongoing challenges for researchers, and they are why popular self-help often falls short or overpromises. While personality change is possible, the scientific literature is much less clear on the specific conditions required for sustainable long-term change, especially compared to the naive optimism many people hold. Our source notes that sustainable change seems to require a number of very specific conditions to be met. It's not just about wanting it. The
Right.
key takeaway here is that personality can change, but it's not like flipping a switch. It's a complex process influenced by our biology, our environment, our relationships, and deliberate, often effortful strategies.
This has been an absolutely fascinating deep dive into the new psychology. Really stimulating. We've explored everything from how psychology itself is constantly evolving to understanding our inherent biases, navigating the complexities of the digital world, and gaining deeper insights into core aspects of human nature like authenticity, nostalgia, and even the real possibility of personal change. It's certainly clear that psychology truly is a dynamic and, well, constantly evolving field.
Indeed. And our hope is that these insights offer you, our listener, practical ways to understand yourself, others, and the world around you a little better. This deep dive should help you feel quickly and thoroughly well-informed on some truly surprising and highly relevant psychological concepts that shape our daily lives. As we wrap up, maybe consider this provocative thought, building on our discussion. If our very understanding of the human mind is so fluid, constantly being reevaluated, and even susceptible to the biases inherent in our data and our own thinking, what implications does this have for how we approach any truth, whether it's scientific, social, or personal in our daily lives? How certain can we really be?
That is a truly great question to ponder, something to really chew on. We encourage you to continue your own deep dives using the critical thinking skills we've discussed today to explore the ever-shifting landscape of knowledge. Join us next time for another deep dive.